Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, The Son of Drona Punished. Text 48 and 49. 48. This is the last verse of Draupadi's petition to save the life of Ashwatthama. Word meanings: Yai, by those, Kopitam, enraged, Brahmakulam, the order of the Brahmanas, Rajanyai, by the administrative order, Ujita, unrestricted, Atmabhi, by oneself, Tat, that, Kulam, family, Pradahati, is burned up, Ashu, within no time, Sa Anubandham, together with family members, Shucha Arpitam, being put into grief. Yaikopitam Brahmakulam Rajanye Rajitatmabhi Tatkulam Pradahatyashu Sanubandham Sucharpitam Yaikopitam Brahmakulam Rajanye Rajitatmabhi Tatkulam Pradahatyashu Sanubandham Sucharpitam Yaikopitam Brahmakulam Rajanye Rajitatmabhi Tatkulam Pradahatyashu Sanubandham Sucharpitam. Tatkulam Pradahatyashu Sanubandham Sucharpitam. Yaikopitam Brahmakulam Rajanye Rajitatmabhi Tatkulam Pradahatyashu Sanubandham Sucharpitam. Yaikopitam Brahmakulam Rajanye Rajitatmabhi Tatkulam Pradahatyashu Sanubandham Sucharpitam. Yaikopitam Brahmakulam Rajanye Rajitatmabhi Tatkulam Pradahatyashu Sanubandham Sucharpitam. Translation: If the kingly administrative order, being unrestricted in sense control, offends the Brahmin order and enrages them, then the fire of that rage burns up the whole body of the royal family and brings grief upon all. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The Brahmin order of society, or the spiritually advanced caste or community, and the members of such highly elevated families were always held in great esteem by the other subordinate castes, namely the administrative kingly order, the mercantile class order, and the laborers. 49. Suto vacha dharmyam nyayam sakarunam nirvyalikam samam mahat raja dharma suto ranya pratyanandad vacho dvija. Sutta Goswami said, O Brahmanas, King Yudhishthira fully supported the statements of the queen, which were in accordance with the principles of religion and were justified, glorious, full of mercy and equity, and without duplicity. Before it, Maharaj Yudhishthira, who was the son of Dharmaraj or Yamaraj, fully supported the words of Queen Draupadi in asking Arjuna to release Ashwatthama. One should not tolerate the humiliation of a member of a great family. Arjuna and his family were indebted to the family of Dronacharya because of Arjuna's learning the military science from him. If ingratitude were shown to such a benevolent family, it would not be at all justified from the moral standpoint. The wife of Dronacharya, who was the half-body of the great soul, must be treated with compassion, and she should not be put into grief because of her son's death. That is compassion. Such statements by Draupadi are without duplicity, because actions should be taken with full knowledge. The feeling of equality was there because Draupadi spoke out of her personal experience. A barren woman cannot understand the grief of a mother. Draupadi was herself a mother, and therefore her calculation of the depth of Kripi's grief was quite to the point. And it was glorious because she wanted to show proper respect to a great family. Jnana-timirandhasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurun meditamena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. And Draupadi has spoken 6 verses. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on the 2nd verse we read today, text 49, he explains how each of the verses that Draupadi spoke aligns with one of these qualities that Sutta Goswami is glorifying her for, or the qualities that are being shown or revealed or expressed through the things that she said. So there are words in this 2nd verse for each of these different things. So he begins by saying, well, he says, the good quality of her words is seen in the previous 6 verses. So the first thing, her words were faithful to Dharma. So that's from the 1st verse. So let's see what she said there, text 43. Actually, it says 43 here, but... Oh, yes, okay. She said, release him, for he is a Brahmana, our spiritual master. So that's a consideration, it says here. Dharma, that's the first, actually it says here in text 49, Dharmyam nyayam shakarunam nirvyalikam samam mahat. So this is a list of the different, I don't know about, yes, mahat. So the first thing on the list here is Dharma. Now interesting, it's in the purport to that verse, Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna and Arjuna, of course, Arjuna first, or Krishna said, right, first thing Krishna said was kill him immediately. That's what Krishna told Arjuna to do, but Arjuna didn't do it right away. They decided to go to Draupadi. But they had their arguments. Arjuna had his arguments. Arjuna actually, he was inclined to kill him. He was extremely angry, of course. And what Ashwatthama had done was so heinous that Arjuna thought it was the right thing to do. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that Arjuna and Krishna were speaking from Dharma, from the point of view of Dharma. And Shastra, actually, but Prabhupada says Shastra. They were speaking from the point of view of Shastra. But when Draupadi spoke, she was speaking, release him for he is a Brahmana, our spiritual master. Now somehow Prabhupada characterizes this as she was speaking just as a matter of custom. That's what Prabhupada said. According to custom, we shouldn't kill him because he's our guru. So Prabhupada characterizes this as speaking from custom and not from Shastra. But, so this seems to be you might say, a kind of a mundane point of view. Arjuna and Krishna are speaking from Shastra, which is transcendental, and Draupadi is speaking from the point of view of just ordinary considerations. But at the end of the purport, Prabhupada, you might say, kind of lets Draupadi off the hook. He says, but she was a devotee, so the way she spoke was appropriate. So this, of course, because she's a devotee, everything she does is dharma. The real dharma is the action of a devotee. In fact, there's a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, what is it? Vyavahara, I'm forgetting it now. Dharma stapana hetu sadhura vyavahara. It says that the devotee's behavior is what is dharma. If you want to know what dharma is, then you see what the devotee does. Because the devotee can act according to time, place, and circumstance. Whatever the pure devotee does, the Mahabhagavat does, is transcendental and is the right thing to do. So that's actually dharma, irrespective of what the Shastra might say. We see sometimes the great devotees, they do things that don't seem to be dharmic, but because they're ultimately sanctioned by Krishna and what Krishna wants, they're according to Krishna's desire, which the Mahabhagavat knows, then they're actually dharma. So this idea that the devotee's compassionate heart, when the devotee acts out of compassion, that this is, of course, a reflection of Krishna. Krishna is the supreme in every quality, so he's also the supreme in compassion. So that's dharmic. Even though we see this kind of tension goes on at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita also. In fact, we see the Prabhupada says both things about Arjuna. He says, in one sense, he's acting just sentimentally, and Krishna is chiding him for being just sentimental. But at the same time, Prabhupada glorifies Arjuna for being a compassionate Vaishnava. So it's natural for him to act in this way and to show these different qualities. So it's as if you can look at it from two different perspectives. So in any case, here we see that Draupadi was acting dharmically. They were both acting dharmically in their speech. There was no wrong thing to say, you might say, in this situation. That's why Arjuna, his solution was sort of halfway between. It was a solution and not a solution. It's like on Ekadashi, drinking water is fasting and not fasting. So he did the right thing, but in some sense it wasn't exactly the right thing, but yes, it was the right thing. It satisfied Krishna. Ultimately it satisfied Krishna, so it was the right thing to do. So that was the first thing, that she showed the quality of dharma by saying this. Release him, for he is a Brahmana, our spiritual master. So the next verse, text 44, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, her words were filled with correctness. So the word here is nyayam, and Prabhupada translates it as justice. Nyayam, justice. So what does she say in text 44? She says, it was by Dronacharya's mercy that you learned the military art of throwing arrows and the confidential art of controlling weapons. And Vishwanath, actually what he says is, he says, her words were filled with correctness. His father taught you the military arts. So in that purport, you may remember, Prabhupada spoke about how the Brahmanas, would teach everything. Dronacharya, he was a Brahmana, but he taught military art, so Arjuna was indebted to him. So the idea of justice was, yes, it's the correct thing to do. You owe it to him. He's your teacher, so you owe him out of respect, and the correct thing to do is not to kill him, not to kill his son. Dronacharya, of course, his whole life is quite interesting. He plays a big role in the Mahabharata war, the Kurukshetra war, actually. He's the first commander, I think, or not one of the first commanders. But he's a Brahmana. So it's interesting because the way he was born, I mentioned this in last class, but you may not remember that Dronacharya, Bharadwaj was smitten by seeing a heavenly society girl, Gritachi, and he passed semen, and that semen was kept in a pot, and then Dronacharya was born from that pot. So Dronacharya was actually raised by Bharadwaj and another sage, Bharadwaj and another sage named Agnivesha. They taught Dronacharya military arts. So when I read this, I thought, I wonder why did they do that? You have to, of course, the Brahmin is supposed to teach everything, but I don't have an answer for it, why they specifically decided to teach him the military arts. Now, it could be that they taught him everything, not only the military arts, but they taught him so many things so he could teach anything that he wanted to, because, again, the point that Prabhupada makes is that that's what Brahmanas do, they teach. And, of course, in order to teach, they have to learn. They have to learn so many things, especially the Shastra, but there are different kinds of Shastra, and one of those Shastras is the Dhanurveda, where you learn the military science. That's why, of course, in Vedic society, the Brahmanas, they didn't really have to go to work, you might say. They were supported by the other castes because they had to spend all their time studying. They didn't have time to go out and go to work. They were just studying and teaching. That was their occupation, of course, studying and teaching others. So that's the point that's made in on this particular verse, text 44. That it was just and correct that our Ashwatthama not be killed because Dronacharya, his father, had taught Arjuna how to fight. And of course, that was, of course, a big thing. Arjuna is known as a great hero. All the Pandavas, they were great fighters, and Dronacharya was so expert that he was able to teach them these great arts, military arts that were so essential for them to rule. Now the next one, text 45, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, her words were full of mercy. So that's the word in text 49. Sakarunam, so karuna, so sakarunam, full of mercy. And that's the way Vishwanath characterizes what she says in text 45. So in text 45 she says, he, Dronacharya, is certainly still existing, being represented by his son. His wife Kripi did not undergo a sati with him because she had a son. So this expresses her feeling of mercy. I also thought this was interesting, why she didn't undergo the sati. Because I always thought that if a woman had children, yes, she wouldn't undergo the sati, but I always thought it meant young children. Dependent children. You wouldn't think that Ashwatthama was a dependent child. He was fighting in the battle of Kurukshetra. So, of course, maybe he was fairly young. I don't know how old he was. I don't know. Maybe Abhimanyu, of course, he was. But he seems to be a contemporary of Arjuna, because Arjuna was studying under Dronacharya along with Ashwatthama. So it seems like he was in that age group. So why the mother wouldn't do the sati because she had a child, even though the child was grown up, that's a new one on me. I never thought of it in that way. Any mother that has a child, she doesn't have to do the sati. Well, it seems like that would be all the mothers, pretty much. In any case, that's what it says here. She didn't undergo the sati because she had a son. So that consideration was there in Draupadi's heart. And what Prabhupada says, Ashwatthama was the representative of Dronacharya, And therefore killing Ashwatthama would be like killing Dronacharya. Well, the Prabhupada describes in that purport how the son is the representative of the father. The son is sometimes said that the father is reborn as the son. So there's an equivalence there, at least in consideration, a way of looking at it. So don't kill, if you kill Ashwatthama, it's just like killing the father, and you owe the father so much, as she explained in the previous verse. So in the next verse, text 46, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in relation to that verse, her words express unwillingness to cause pain to others. So the word there is nirvilikam, actually, which means unpretentious, generally. There's a verse in the second canto, Lord Brahma speaks, 5th chapter, I think it is, where he uses this word in relationship to a devotee. Devotee's devotional service must be nirvilikam, which means unpretentious, or non-duplicitous. We also use this word, the nirvilikam. In other words, simple and honest and straightforward. That's a characteristic of a devotee and a characteristic of the devotee's devotional service to the Lord. So here Prabhupada translates it as nirvilikam, without duplicity in dharma. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he translates it as unwillingness to cause pain to others. So what is the verse? Text 46. O most fortunate one who knows the principles of religion. So she's speaking to Arjuna. It is not good for you to cause grief to glorious family members who are always respectable and worshipful. Now there's a short purport here where Prabhupada says, a slight insult for a respectable family is sufficient to invoke grief. Therefore, a cultured man should always be careful in dealing with worshipful family members. So even though, of course, we have this term, Brahma Bandhu, so it means friend of a Brahmana, or sometimes Prabhupada says relative of a Brahmana, and the word is used for someone who's a member of a Brahmin family, but not acting like a Brahmana. But according to the principle that's being spoken of here, even that person is supposed to be respected. You're supposed to respect everyone in the family of the Brahmana, everyone in the Brahmana family, or in the family of a respectable person. It's like Srila Prabhupada when he would meet devotees, families sometimes, parents. He would often honor them by saying how fortunate they were because they had a son or a daughter who was a devotee, offering their life in the service of God. So of course he always treated everyone respectfully, but he would often point out this point, and make this point, that they were especially, what is the word I want to say, fortunate because they had a devotee's son. So the family of the Guru is worshipable. That's another, the family of the Guru, of course, is respectable, and the God brothers and God sisters of the Guru also. There's an interesting verse on the Prahlada Maharaj. I was looking for it this morning, but I couldn't find it, but I know it's there in the 7th canto, where it talks about how Prahlada Maharaj, there are a lot of verses glorifying Prahlada Maharaj, his extraordinary character and his level of Krishna consciousness. Essentially, he was like an avaduta even as a child. He would see Krishna directly. He was so advanced. And it said one of the things about Prahlada Maharaj was he always offered great respect to his guru. And then there's a verse there that talks about gurus in the plural, or in the Sanskrit. He offered respect to his gurus. Gurun, maybe that's the Sanskrit. Not sure exactly. But Prabhupada translates that as the God brothers of the Guru. The senior, I think the word he says is his own, not the Guru's God brothers, but one's own senior God brothers, actually, Prabhupada says. In the context of honoring the Gurus, he says one should see one's own senior God brothers as like one sees one's Guru. Of course, respect is such an important part of the life of Krishna consciousness. So see, in that way, an expanded vision, you might say, anyone related to the Guru is considered to be, on that level, like the Guru's godbrothers, or even one's own senior devotees. Now, of course, in Prabhupada's movement, he had many senior devotees, and Prabhupada always respected. This was something that we learned early in Krishna consciousness, was to follow authority, of course. Prabhupada, I just finished reading Rancher Prabhu's book about Prabhupada in England, what was it called, When the Sun Shines. So, we could see there how Srila Prabhupada, he was making so many new devotees, but he also, you might say, he gave special positions or special attention to the older godbrothers and godsisters. And he would tell devotees, learn from your older godbrothers and godsisters. And of course, he wanted them to be in charge of the temples, and he himself, it comes out in that book that Prabhupada quite early, this was fairly early on, he had spoken about retiring from management and just translating his books. And he wanted the movement to go on under the care of his senior devotees, the earliest devotees in the movement that had responsible positions in the movement. And he always wanted the devotees under their care and supervision to adhere to the system of following instructions, basically, of their older godbrothers and godsisters. He wanted things to run that way. Even from, of course, a practical point of view, from a managerial sense, an organization can't go on if there's just rebellion, constant rebellion against authorities. So Prabhupada placed people in positions of authority, and he expected devotees to follow that. There's one interesting letter, there was some disagreement among devotees someplace. And Prabhupada said, it doesn't matter whether one is in the higher level or the lower level. He said, that's just for practical consideration. Nobody is actually higher or lower. You're all equal. But for organization, one person has to be in a leadership position, and there have to be leaders and followers. Essentially, this was the point. Don't think necessarily that this person is more spiritually advanced. This wasn't implied in what he said. No, you're all my godbrothers equally, and I see you in that way. But for practical management, this respect has to be given, because otherwise, how can the organization go on? So this practical consideration is there, even in the running of society. So this is something that's brought out here, this idea that you should honor the family just out of principle. So then this is the last of Draupadi's words. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in relationship to text 47, her words expressed a sense of calmness, allaying suffering. So what did she say in text 47? My Lord, do not make the wife of Dronacharya cry like me. I am aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not cry constantly like me. Oh, actually, that's not the last one. There's one more. So it says, the word there is samam. So samam means equal. So calm, equal. That's the idea. In other words, she's speaking very calmly, even though you might say she could be hysterical. Her 5 sons have been killed, and here's the killer right in front of her. So she might just kill this person, this horrible person. But she remained calm and thoughtful, and so this is the idea here. Because she's thinking, well, yeah, I may have this anger within me and I may want vengeance, but it's really not right. So I'll calm down and I'll speak in the right way. And the right thing to do is don't let her cry. What is that? Is that a child crying or a crow? Anyway, someone's crying somewhere, I guess. So she doesn't want Kripi to cry, because she said, don't make her cry like me, by killing her son. So she's showing this calmness, thinking calmly in this situation, which is, and one would necessarily not be calm in. She could be really hyped up, you might say, very hyper, not thinking clearly, which happens. We're in a difficult, traumatic situation. We don't tend to think clearly, but she did. Samam, she was thinking she expressed a sense of calmness, is what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. So finally, the last of hers is text 48, the first verse we read today. He says, her harsh words express generosity, desiring to benefit the hearer meaning Arjuna. So I thought this was interesting. Now what does she say? She says, if the kingly administrative order, being unrestricted in sense control, offends the Brahmin order and enrages them, then the fire of that rage burns up the whole body of the royal family and brings grief to all. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur characterizes this as harsh words. So we might say she's just giving the blunt truth here. In that sense, they're harsh words. Like, listen, Arjuna, I've been giving these, you might say, soft arguments, but here's a strong argument. If you offend Brahmanas, in principle, if you offend Brahmanas, they're so powerful, they can destroy the Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas, of course, we tend to think of Kshatriyas as powerful, and certainly the Pandavas were powerful. So many powerful persons on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. But the Brahmanas are so powerful, they can kill even powerful Kshatriyas. Just like the Brahmanas, of course, in the story of King Vena. Just by their very words, just by sound, they were able to kill. So Draupadi is cautioning Arjuna, consider this too. This is, as Vishwanath says, these are harsh words. He says, you have to consider that. So all of these considerations are there. Now what we see here, I'll make this one final point here. Of course, the Bhagavatam is for transcendence. Ultimately, it's for transcendence. It's meant for the transcendentalists. But we see that it has a lot to do with the material world. It has to do a lot to do with life in the material world. And because we have to learn about the material world, we have to live in the material world. And one of the things, of course, material life in the ideal situation is to have Varnashram Dharma. And the foundation of Varnashram Dharma is really the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas, and the rulers and the head and the arms, and the power, the physical power and the brain power. And so the relationship between these two is a very important thing. This comes out, Gopi Prahlada Prabhu, he gave a seminar, series of classes on the relationship between Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, and it was based on the meeting between Kardama Muni and Swayambhuva Manu. Their conversation, they're speaking. So when Manu Maharaj arrives, he's bringing Devahuti to Kardama Muni because he wants to have his daughter get married to the sage. So when he arrives, it's interesting, when Swayambhuva Manu arrives, he offers his respects, but then he just sits there and doesn't say anything. So this is the etiquette, because he's considered the superior should be the first one to speak. So he's considering that the Brahmana is superior, so I'm here, he'll see that I'm here, so he'll speak first, and that's what happens. Kardama Muni speaks first, and he glorifies the Kshatriya order. Swayambhuva Manu represents the Kshatriyas. He's the original king in one sense. He's a ruler of the whole earth, at least. So he points out so many things, how important it is to have Kshatriyas, because without the Kshatriyas, the Brahmanas wouldn't be able to do what they are supposed to do. And a point that comes out in their discussion is that they protect each other. The Brahmanas protect the Kshatriyas, or the Kshatriyas protect the Brahmanas because, through physical force, they're the military arm, so they protect from physical harm especially, and they uphold Dharma in certain ways. But the Brahmanas also, they protect the Kshatriyas by specifically upholding Dharma and by educating the society, by educating the praja it makes the job of the Kshatriyas much easier. They have an educated citizens to rule over. And in so many ways, the Brahmanas help to keep order in society, so they make the Kshatriyas' job easier. So this dynamic that takes place, they have different natures, but they both contribute foundationally to the success of the Varnashram institution. So some of that idea is also coming out here, especially we're seeing from Draupadi how much respect she has for the Brahmanas, even for someone who has not acted respectably. She's pointing out that it's an important consideration in different ways how he should not be killed. All right, I'll stop here. Let me just read the translation to these two verses. If the kingly administrative order, being unrestricted in sense control, offends the Brahmin order and enrages them, then the fire of that rage burns up the whole body of the royal family and brings grief upon all. Sutta Goswami said, O Brahmanas, King Yudhishthira fully supported the statements of the queen, which were in accordance with the principles of religion and were justified, glorious, full of mercy and equity, and without duplicity. Any questions or comments? Madhumati Prabhu?
The last point you were making about the importance of the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas, and you kind of see that with Shringi and Parikshit Maharaj, the whole thing, they're not feel supported or they don't support, then what happens, when Shringi cursed.
Yeah.
Also, I was thinking about how in Chanakya Pandit's life also the same thing happened. It was the Brahmins, in that case, the Brahmin was not supported, and then there was a whole war went on because of that.
I'm not so familiar with the story.
But
Chandragupta rejected Chanakya Pandit at some point?
Yeah, was offended.
He offended him, I see.
The Kshatriya offended Chanakya Pandit, the Brahmin.
Right.
And then there was just, so.
Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.